Today we are going to show you how to replace the drive belt in a John Deere X500 series mower. This is an X590. I've found it easiest on these mowers to remove the back fender pan. It doesn't take a whole lot to remove it. A total of 6 screws and bolts, which here before I get to that, I'm unattaching the seat safety switch here. It'll feed down through the pan, and then sometimes the gas cap gets caught, so I take the gas cap out. This one has that little holder on it, so if you reach your hand down in there, you can pull that out pretty easy. So here I'm going to try and take it off before I take off the other 4 bolts and nuts. So there I remember. So it's got the 2 bolts in the back by the seat base, and then it has 2 on each side that connect to the footrest. Believe that those are 13 millimeter. And so if they're not rusty, which some of them get pretty rusty, you can just bust them loose, and then they come off pretty easy after that. So just bust them loose with a wrench, and then grab an angle impact if you have one, or you can just use 2 wrenches to get those off. So I'm getting my angle impact here. Real quick, this was preventative maintenance. The belt had not broken on this yet, but while we were servicing this for a customer, we noticed that the drive belt had a lot of notches in it, which we'll show you at the end of the video, that we're going to give the owner grief at some point. So we contacted him and asked him, hey, you've got some big notches out of your belt. Do you want us to go ahead and fix those? And he said yes. I think the belt was around $60 or $70, and total process took us about 20 minutes. Took me about 20 minutes to replace. So here I'm just popping out these 4 bolts, nuts and bolts, 2 on each side. They came out pretty easy. They weren't rusty or anything, but I've seen some that have gotten pretty rusty. So like I said, I believe those are 13 millimeter on those, and then the 2 that I took out by the seat pan were 10 millimeter. So I've got all the nuts and bolts out. I've got the seat safety switch detached and the gas cap off. Now this thing should pop right off. Now it's kind of, you'll get some dirt and mud in between the footrest and the seat pan, and that may kind of make it more difficult to come out, but eventually it comes out. There we go. So once you get it up there, make sure you kind of feed that wire that goes to the seat safety switch through so it doesn't get hung up on something. But there, it's off, it's out. Now, before you go too far, get your gas cap back on so you don't have debris falling down in there. There's only so much you can do with the gas cap off while you're taking the fender pan off, but this should limit the amount of debris that goes in here. Sometimes you can take those off to the side, but first there is a little bar that goes through the frame that's on with an 18 millimeter or 3/4 inch nut. So you'll need to take that off before you can take the fuel tank off. And what's underneath the fuel tank is the drive pulley on the transmission that you can easily access the belt to. So that comes out there. And then you can set the fuel tank to the side. Here in a little bit, you'll see me unattach the wiring harness that goes to the fuel sending unit. That reads your fuel level. So I'm getting ready to take that off, but first I try to set it to the side without doing that. It doesn't work. But so here we go. Fuel tank coming off. Whoops, I don't have enough play to get it to the side. So I unattach the electric going to the fuel sending unit here. It's really easy to unattach. Just a clip that kind of comes off, and if you've got a little bit of time, you can take this time to kind of clean some things off underneath, whether that's your fuel tank, and there you can see there's some dirt that's built up on the fan. But anyway, there's the fan and drive pulley on top of the transmission. It takes an 18 millimeter 3/4, don't remember which off the top of my head. You take that off, and it's just really easy to get the tension off that belt. There's a spring right above that fan that holds the tension on the idler pulley arm. but instead of undoing the spring and then trying to get the spring back on and pinching your fingers and stuff, I found it easiest just to remove this, and then you can get to everything. So now that pulley should pull right up, and there'll be a little bit of tension on that belt. It'll want to kind of spring forward, so let it do so, and then take that belt on off. But there I'm pointing at the spring, probably talking about it. Well, put that back on, but you can see the spring there kind of underneath my hands. So there, all of the tension is off the belt. Next step is getting underneath the machine and loosening the 2 pulleys on the idler arm. Believe those were 13 millimeter. So you can loosen those up. The bolt that goes through them is a shouldered bolt with a rounded edge on top. So once you get them loose, you should be able to reach up above or pull down on that nut, and you can loosen it the rest of the way. You don't have to take these all the way off. You just have to loosen them enough to where you have some clearance between the pulley and that guide. So there I'm fishing it around the guide, and then on this side I'm fishing it through there. So this is the old belt here. So I've got them off of both of those pulleys. Then I'm going to move to the front pulley and get it off of that. And then you have to feed it through here. And you'd think it'd be real easy, but the lift rock shaft has a little arm that goes up from it. You can see I'm pulling on it there. Well, that lift rock shaft made it really difficult to snake that old belt around. Actually had a little bit of trouble with it and ended up pausing the video there. But here I've gotten that old belt off. Here I'm putting the new one on, and you just kind of have to snake that belt up around that little arm off of the lift rock shaft. And if you don't want to have pressure on that lift rock shaft, so you want to be able to move it around so that you can get it past the steering valve and the lines that go into the steering valve. But if you move it back and forth, you can get that belt on without taking the rock shaft off or anything like that. So there it snakes through. Here's the opportunity where you want to make sure that the belt is going the right direction, that there's no twists in the belt, that the beveled end is going around the pulleys it should. So I've got it around the engine pulley, and next I'm going to snake it through the idler arm pulleys. It's always fun working underneath dirty machines too. You got dirt and all kinds of crap falling in your eyes, but it is what it is. So go around to that first pulley first, the pulley closest to the engine first, and then go through the idler sheave there, and in that goes. Once you have that belt in there, you can go ahead and tighten those up. Do them finger tight first, and then while you're down here, might as well check those 2 pulleys. Make sure that they're spinning freely. There's no damage to those pulleys or anything like that. Because if there's something wrong with those pulleys, they can mess up your belt too. So just giving them a quick spin test, making sure they're spinning all right. But might as well check those pulleys. If there's something wrong with them, you can replace it while you're at it. So I get them finger tight here. Now that the belt is on and now that the pulleys are tested, the pulleys look good. So we'll now get them tightened on with the impact. I'm sure there's some torque specification on these. It's not exactly a rocket ship, not too worried about the torque specs on it, but that's in. So then you go back up to the engine pulley, make sure it's tight on that, and then pull back on it to feed it through so all the slack is in the back. Now you can take that spring off that I just pointed to. You can take that spring off and it will loosen the tension on that belt. You can see as I pull on it, it's extending that spring. You could take that spring off, but I think it's just as easy to take that pulley off the transmission, if not easier, and then rotate that pulley back like that. And then it's a toothed gear, so you'll have to line up the splines. May take you a second, but then it goes on okay. Once that pulley is back on, you can get your fan back on, then the washer and the nut, And again, that's a 18 or 3/4, can't remember off the top of my head. They're about the same. And you can get that tightened back on. Before you go too far with getting everything tightened back on, getting the fuel tank back on, fender tank and all that, it is a good idea just to make sure that now that everything's back together, that the belt's going the right way, it moves as it should, it's still around the engine pulley. So I'm going to get back underneath there and check to make sure that it's still on. So everything looks like it's feeding correctly. Appears to be the correct belt, which is good. Don't see any obstructions. It's going around those pulleys just fine. So that's all back in there now. Now we can go ahead and get the fuel tank back on. Make sure your wiring harness doesn't get pinched between the fuel tank and the frame, and that the fuel lines are going the way they should. Kind of slips back down in there. You can go ahead and get the fuel tank holder, arm or rod or whatever it is, snaked back through that hole. Now, I've done a few of these, and I've never seen this rusty. Of course, it's pretty well protected from the frame, but pretty easy to get that finger tight and then just hit it with an impact, because it's kind of hard to get to the back side of it. But if you can get that hit with an impact, or however you can tighten that back up, there it goes. So now that's back on. You want to snake your wiring harness back the way it goes. So I started with the fuel sending unit connection, got it all connected in there, and then whenever I took that wiring harness off, I think it's supposed to go back underneath that one there, that foam, but this one wasn't, so I'm gonna put it back the way it was. Again, I'm gonna take the fuel cap back off, and get the fender pan back on. Taking the fuel cap off, I understand a little bit of debris may be able to get into the fuel tank as you're getting that back on, but it just makes it, in my experience, so much easier. I've always taken the fuel cap off. I'm not even sure if you can take it off without getting that cap off. Here we get the wiring harness run back up through there. So it goes through the fender pan and then up through the seat, or the seat base. So pull it back through, and then it goes down into these little notches here in between the footrest and that notch. So I'm going to get that as close to where it needs to be as possible. Make sure there's nothing sticking up through there. But we're getting close. We're getting close. So there you can see that lip from the rear fender pan is hanging over top of the footrest. Instead of fighting it, I've found that the best way is to take a broadhead screwdriver and pry back on one end. Try not to scuff up too much paint or anything like that. But if you get that in there, I found that that's the easiest way to pop that into place. You don't want to bend it or anything like that, and there it goes. So a little bit of pressure with your left arm pushing on the back of that rear fender pan helps too. So now that that's all back together, we want to get the 6 bolts that hold the rear fender pan back on. I line up the 2 that are by the seat pan first, and then I do the ones that go into the footrest. So I've got those lined up. I'm not going to tighten them up yet. I'll wait to tighten them up until after I get the bolts that go into the footrest. But there it is. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and put this fuel cap back on. That little thing you can kind of bend with your hands and push it down in there. And then now see you can't pull it up, so you can't lose your fuel cap, which is good. You don't want to lose that, dude. Now that that's in, we've got the bolts that go from the rear fender pan into the footrest. So again, those are pretty sure 13 millimeter. So we'll get those in here. I think this would be a pretty tough job without taking that rear fender pan off. I've never tried it. I've always taken the rear fender pan off, and that's what I'd recommend. But I'm not sure what John Deere's process calls for. This is just the way that I've always done this. So you get the The nut on the bolt there, make sure you go through that little L-shaped frame and tighten those dudes up, and then you're good to go. My cheap little China-made angle impact got that socket stuck on there, so I'm gonna skip ahead here so you don't have to watch me fight getting that thing off. So here we've got the other side again, getting those nuts and bolts back in just like we took them out. So get these things in and tightened up, and then we should be on our way. You know, whenever these belts, if they do break, which I've seen some break, they can do more damage than just to the belt. I've seen them break the pulleys, seen them tear the idler arm way out of place. So this was prevent maintenance. I didn't want him to have to go through that. But here you can take a look at this belt, and it's got a lot missing. There's a big chunk missing there. There's another chunk missing, and then here's a third chunk missing. This machine isn't terribly old, but I mean it's probably getting to be 10 years old. So these belts just get a little bit of wear, and again, if they break, it can do damage to the pulleys. It can do damage to other things. So if you notice it, might as well do you a little bit of preventative maintenance. You can see that belt just breaking apart there. So anyway, not too bad of a job. All in all, it took about 20 minutes to replace that. Belt wasn't too expensive. So there you go.